The 26th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, "The veil and screen from yourself will not be removed, unless you get out of the creation and turn the back of your heart." 74. Futuh al Ghaib. Against them in all conditions of life, and unless your desires vanish and then your purpose and your longings and your ego disappear from the existence of this world and of the hereafter and become like a whole vessel, and nothing remains in you of purpose except the purpose of your Lord, and you are filled with the light of your Lord and there remains no place and room in your heart except for your Lord, and you become the gatekeeper of your heart and you are given the sword of monotheism and greatness and power. Then whatever you see approaching the gate of your heart from the atmosphere of your mind, you will remove its head from its shoulder, so that there remains not for yourself and your desire and your purpose and your longing of this world and of the hereafter anything with its head raised, nor any word that is listened to, nor any opinion which is followed, except obedience to the commandment of the Lord and standing by him, and cheerful acceptance of his decree, and more than that, merging in his decree and allotment. Thus you become the servant of the Lord and not the servant of the people and their opinion. And when this becomes a permanent feature in your life, curtains of self-respect will be hung around your heart and trenches of dignity will be dug round it, and the power of greatness will surround it, and your heart will be guarded by the army of truth and monotheism. Besides this, guards of truth will be posted near it, so that people may not have any access to it through the devil, through your animal self, through passion, through purpose, through vain desires and false claims growing in the minds of people, and through misguidance growing from desires. If it is destined that people will come to you in unbroken succession, and they will be unanimous in regard to your greatness so that they may obtain dazzling light and clear signs and deep wisdom, and see evident miracles and supernatural happenings as a regular feature of your life and thereby increase in their efforts to be near God and to be obedient to him and also. 75. Futuh al Ghaib. Increase in their effort for the service of their Lord. Even when all these things happen, you will be made secure from all of them and from the inclination of your human spirit towards desire, from self-admiration and vanity and importance attendant on a large number of people coming to you and on their being attentive to you. Similarly, if it is destined that you shall have a wife, beautiful and graceful, responsible for her own self and for her own maintenance, you will be made secure from her evil and will be saved from carrying her burden and that of her retainers and relations, and she will be for you a gift of God, sufficient, blessed and harmonious in temperament and clean from insincerity and evil-mindedness and fraud and malice, and breach of trust in your absence. Thus, she will be in your subjection. Then she and her relations will make you free from the burden of her maintenance and will ward off from you any trouble on her account. And if it is destined that she will beget any child for you, it will be a righteous and pure descendant who will be pleasing to your eyes. God says, "And we made his wife fit for him." 21:90. He further says, "O our Lord, grant us in our wives and our offspring the joy of our eyes, and make us leaders for those who guard against evil." 25:74. Still further he says, "And make him, my Lord, acceptable to thee." 19:6. Thus all these prayers which are in these verses will come into action and be accepted in your case, whether or not you address these prayers to God, because as they are meant for those who are worthy of them, and are favored with these blessings, and are worthy of this position, and are established in this condition, and to whom the favor and nearness of God are allotted. 76. Futuh al Ghaib. Similarly, if it is destined that a certain thing of this world will come to you, it will not in such a case cause you any harm. Thus exactly what is your portion in it will come to you, purified for your sake by the act of God and his will and the issue of order for its reaching you. So it will reach you and you will be rewarded, provided you get it in obedience to his command, just as you will be rewarded on performing obligatory prayer and observing obligatory fast. And you will be commanded with regard to what is not your portion that you should spend it on those who deserve it from among your friends and neighbors and the deserving among the beggars and on those who deserve zakat money according to the needs of the circumstances. The actual state of affairs will be revealed to you and you will be able to distinguish between the deserving and the undeserving ones. Hearsay reports cannot be as good as actual experience. Then, you will be white and clear in your affair on which there will be no obscurity, no ambiguity, no confusion, no doubt. Therefore, take to patience, cultivate cheerful submission, pay regard to the present, take to obscurity, remain quiet, remain composed, remain silent, remain silent. Beware, make good your escape, make good your escape, make haste, make haste. Fear God, and again, fear God. Cast down your look, cast down your look, turn away your eyes, turn away your eyes. Be modest till the destiny reaches its appointed time and you are taken by your hand and brought to the forefront. Then will be removed from you all that you feel heavy, after which you will be made to plunge into an ocean of favors and kindness and mercy and will be clothed with the robe of light and divine secrets and rare divine knowledge. Then you will be made near and spoken to, and given gifts, and made free from need and made courageous and exalted, and addressed with the words, surely you are in our presence today, dignified, trusted. 1254. 77. Futuh al Ghaib. Then guess and estimate from the condition of Joseph, the truthful, when he was addressed in these words through the tongue of the king of Egypt who was also its chief and Pharaoh. Apparently it was the tongue of the king that was speaking and expressing him, but in fact the speaker was God, who was speaking through the tongue of knowledge. To Joseph was given the material kingdom, which was the kingdom of Egypt, as also the kingdom of the Spirit, which was the kingdom of knowledge, spiritual and intellectual, and nearness to God, and distinction and high position before God. Thus it is that God says, and thus did we give to Joseph power in the land, he had mastery in it wherever he liked. 1256. The land here stands for Egypt. With regard to the kingdom of spirit, God says, thus it was that we might turn away from him evil and indecency. Surely he was one of our sincere servants. 1224. With regard to the kingdom of knowledge, he says, this is of what my Lord has taught me. Surely I have forsaken the religion of a people who believe not in Allah. 1237. When you were thus addressed, O truthful one, you were given an ample share of great knowledge and blessed with strength and goodness and power and general saintliness and an order which affects the spiritual as well as the non-spiritual things. You are also vested with the power of creation with the permission of God, of things in this world even before the coming of the hereafter. Then, in the hereafter, you will be in the abode of peace and in high paradise. The sight of the countenance of God will be an additional thing and a favor, and it is an objective which has no limit and no end. 78. Futuh al Ghaib. The 27th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, regard good and evil as two fruits coming out from two branches of a single tree. One of the two branches yields sweet fruit and the other bitter. So you leave cities and countries and the outlying part of countries where fruits plucked from this tree is sent, and keep away from them and their people. Approach the tree itself and become its guard and attendant servant and acquire knowledge of these two branches and of the two fruits and their neighborhoods and remain near the branch which yields sweet fruit. Then, it will be your food and your source of strength, and beware lest you should approach the other branch and eat the fruit of it lest its bitterness should kill you. When you persist in this attitude you will be in ease and security and safety from all troubles, because troubles and all kinds of calamities are born of this bitter fruit. When you are away from this tree and wander about in countries and these fruits are brought before you and they are mixed up in a manner that the sweet cannot be distinguished from the bitter and you start eating them, your hand may fall on the bitter and you may put it in your mouth and eat a part of it and chew it so that its bitterness goes to your palate, and then to your throat and further to your brain and nostrils and spreads its effect on you as far as your veins and the organs of your body, and you are thus killed. Your throwing away the remainder from your mouth and washing off its effect cannot take away from you what has already spread in your body and will not benefit you. If, in the beginning you eat the sweet fruit and its sweetness spreads to different parts of your body and you have been benefited by it and have become happy, even this is not enough for you. It is inevitable that you will eat another fruit and you cannot be sure that this other one will not be bitter, so you will experience what I have already mentioned to you. 79. Futuh al Ghaib. Thus, it is no good to be far from the tree and to be ignorant of its fruit, and safety lies in being near to it and in standing by it. So good and evil are both acts of God, the mighty, the glorious. Allah has created you and what you make. 37:96. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, has said, God has created the man who slaughters as well as the animal slaughtered. The actions of God's servant are his creation as also the fruit of that labor. God, the mighty, the glorious, has said, enter the garden for what you did. 16:32. Glory be to him, how generous and merciful of him. He ascribes the actions to them and says that their entry into paradise is on account of their deeds, whereas these deeds owe their existence to his help and mercy. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, has said, no one enters paradise on account of his own deeds. He was asked, not even you, O Prophet of God? He said, yes, not even I, unless God covers with his mercy. While saying this, he placed his hand on his head. This is narrated in one of the narrations of Aisha, God be pleased with her. Thus, when you are obedient to God in carrying out his behest and refraining from what he has forbidden, be resigned to him in what he has appointed. He will protect you from his evil and increase his good to you, and will protect you from all evils, religious and worldly. As for worldly things, there is a word of God. 80. Futuh al Ghaib. Thus it was that we might turn away from him evil and indecency. Surely he was one of our sincere servants. Quran 12:24. And as for religion, he says, why should Allah chastise you if you are grateful and believe? 147. Indeed, what will a calamity do to a person who is a believer and grateful? He is nearer to safety than to calamity, inasmuch as he is in a state of plenty because of his gratefulness. God says, if you are grateful, I will give you more. 14:7. Thus your faith will quench the fire in the hereafter, the fire which will be the punishment of every sinner. How can it be then that it will not quench the fire of calamity in this life, O my God, unless it is some servant in a state of spiritual ecstasy and who has been selected for wilayat and for divine choice? In such a case calamities are inevitable, but these are to make him free from the abomination of passions and low inclination of nature, and from relying upon the desires of the flesh and its enjoyments, and from being contented with people, and from the pleasure felt in their nearness, and from living with them, and from feeling pleased with them. So he is tried until all these weaknesses depart from him, and his heart is purified by the expulsion of the whole lot of them, so that what remains in it is unity of the Lord and knowledge of truth, and it becomes the landing place of many kinds of secrets from the unseen and knowledge and light of nearness. This is because it is a house in which there is no room for two. As God says, Allah has not made for any man two hearts within him. 33:4. Again, surely the kings, when they enter a town, ruin it and make the noblest of its people to be low. 27:34. 81. Futuh al Ghaib. Then they turn out the nobles from their good position and comfortable life. The sovereignty over the heart was in the beginning of the devil of desires and selfishness, and the organs and the faculties used to be moved by their order for various sins, vanities and trifles. This sovereignty now vanishes, and the organs become restful, and the house of the king becomes clear, and the courtyard, which is the breast, becomes clean. The heart has now become clean and has become the habitation of the unity of God and of knowledge, and as for the courtyard, it has become the alighting ground of wonderful things from the unseen. All this is the result of calamities and trials and their fruit. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, has said, we, prophets, are beset with the greatest number of trials among people, then others and still others, according to rank. He has also said, I know more of God than any of you, and am more afraid of him than any of you. Anyone who is near the king must have his danger and guardedness increased of necessity, because he is in the presence of the king, from whose observation nothing is now hidden of his manipulations and movements. Now, if you say that the whole creation in the sight of God is like one man, that nothing of it remains hidden from him, what then is the good of this statement? The answer is that when a person's position is raised and he is placed in an honorable rank, risks also become great, because it becomes necessary for him to give thanks for what God has conferred on him, in the shape of various blessings and favors. So that the slightest diversion from service to him is a default in gratitude to him and is a shortcoming in one's obedience to him. Thus God says, 82. Futuh al Ghaib. O wives of the Prophet! Whoever of you is guilty of manifestly improper conduct, the chastisement shall be doubled for her. 33:30. God says this to these ladies on account of his having completed his blessings on them by bringing them in contact with the Holy Prophet. What then will be the position of one who is attached to God and is near him? God is far too high and above all similitude with his creation. Nothing is like him, and he is the hearing, the seeing. 42:11. The 28th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, So you wish for comfort and joy and happiness and safety and peace, to be blessed and carefree, while you are still in the crucible and in the course of killing your animal self, free will, and are in the midst of a struggle with your desires and that of removing your objects, and with the hope of returns in this world and in the hereafter, and the remnant of these still remains with you in a very potent form. O hasty one! Halt and walk slowly, O you expectant one! The door is closed till this state continues. Surely some remnants of these things are still in you and some small particles of it are still in you. It is the emancipation contract of a slave, so long as even a penny is left in it, you are shut out from it. So long as there remains with you the measure of sucking the stone of a date from this world and from your desire and purpose and longing and from your seeing anything of this world or seeking anything or liking anything from the returns of this world or the hereafter, so long as anything among these things persists in you, you are still at the door of self-annihilation. You have to stop here until you acquire the annihilation completely and perfectly, and then you are taken out of the crucible and your seasoning is complete, and you are adorned with ornaments and dressed and perfumed and incensed, then you are taken to the great king and addressed with the words. 83. Futuh al Ghaib. Surely thou art in our presence today dignified, trusted. 12:54. Then you will be provided with comforts and shown gentleness and fed with his favor and also given drink, and you will be made near and will be enlightened on secrets which will not be hidden from you. You will be made free from want on account of what you will be given out of these things, free from the need of all things. Do you not see the pieces of gold, of various shapes, changing and circulating, morning and evening, in the hands of druggists and greengrocers and butchers and tanners and oilmen and sweepers and people of various crafts, both very fine and lowly and dirty? Then these pieces are collected together and placed in the crucible of the goldsmith. They melt with the flames of fire, then they are taken out of the crucible and pounded and softened and seasoned to make them into ornaments, and polished and perfumed, and then left in the best places and houses, behind locks, in treasures and boxes and dark places, or they are made to adorn the body of a bride, and they are ornamented and given honor, and sometimes the bride may even be of a great king. Thus the pieces of gold pass from the hands of tanners to the presence of kings and to the court after being melted and pounded. In this way you, O believer, if you show patience regarding the enforcement of the allotment of providence and give cheerful submission to his decree in every condition of life, you will be made near to your Lord in this world, and you will be blessed with knowledge of him and other kinds of knowledge, and secrets, and will be given residence in the hereafter in the abode of peace with the prophets and the siddiqs and the shahids and the salis in the proximity of God and in his house and near him, enjoying his kindness. So show patience and do not make haste, and remain pleased with the decree of providence and do not complain against him. If you do so, you will get the coolness of his forgiveness and the sweetness of knowledge about him and his kindness and favor. 84. Futuh al Ghaib. The 29th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, regarding the saying of the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, poverty may well nigh lead to unbelief. The servant believes in God and surrenders all his affairs to God. He has his faith in the easy providence of sustenance from him, and has also the firm conviction that whatever is to come to him can by no means escape him, and that whatever escapes him can by no means come to him, and that whoever keeps his duty to Allah, he ordains a way out for him. and gives him sustenance from whence he imagines not. And whoever trusts in Allah, He is sufficient for him. 65, 2, 3. He says all this while he is in a state of ease and comfort. Then God tries him with calamity and poverty, so he takes to petition and humble entreaty, but he does not remove these things from him. It is then that the truth of the Holy Prophet's saying, poverty may well nigh lead to unbelief, becomes established. Then as for him with whom Allah deals gently, He removes from him what afflicts him and gives him comfort and affluence and gives him power to be thankful and to give praise to God, and he continues doing so till the man meets him. When Allah wants to try him, He perpetuates his calamity and poverty and cuts off from him the help of faith. Then He shows unbelief by finding fault with, and accusing God, and by doubting in His promise. So he's an unbeliever in God, disputing His signs and feeling angry at his Lord. It is to such a man that the Prophet of God, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, refers to in his saying, verily the man who is most severely punished of all people on the day of resurrection is one to whom God has given both poverty in this life and chastisement in 85. Futuh al Ghaib. The hereafter, we ask the protection of God from such a plight. The poverty spoken of in the saying is the one that makes man forgetful of God, and it is from this that he has sought his protection. The other man whom God wants to choose and select, and whom He has included among His favorites and friends and successors of His prophets, and has marked out as chief of His walls and a great man among His servants and their learned men, and their intercessors and their guides towards their master, and their instructors in the path of guidance and in avoiding the evil ways, to such a man He sends mountains of patience and akeens of the spirit of cheerful submission and reconcilement, and a total merging in the act of God. Then He confers on him abundantly of His gifts and nurtures him with lavish care during all hours of night and day, in company as well as in solitude, sometimes in open, sometimes in secret, in the latter case, with various kinds of kindness and affection, and these things He continues to get till the moment of his death. The 30th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, how often you say, what shall I do and what means shall I adopt, for the attainment of my object? So you are told, stay at your own place and do not go beyond your limit till a way out conies to you from Him who has commanded you to stay where you are. God says, O you who believe, be steadfast and try to excel in steadfastness and guard the frontiers. And keep your duty to Allah. 3. 199. He has commanded you to be patient, O believer, then to vie with one another in patience and to be steadfast and to remain on guard and to make this incumbent on yourself. He further warns you against discarding patience as contained in the words, be careful of your duty to God, and this is in respect of 86. Futuh al Ghaib. Discarding this virtue. This means that you should not give up patience. Thus good and safety lie in patience. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, has said, patience stands in the same relation to faith as the head stands in relation to the body. It is also said that for everything is a reward according to a measure, but as for the reward of patience, it will be a price which has no measure. As God says, truly the steadfast will be paid their reward without measure. 39:10. So when you have been careful about your duty to Him in virtue of patience and in paying full regard to the limits set by God, He will reward you as He has promised you in His book. And whoever keeps his duty to Allah, He ordains a way out for him, and gives him sustenance from whence he imagines not. 65:2-3. Remain patiently with those who trust in God till the way out comes to you, because God has promised you sufficiency in His words. And whoever trusts in Allah, He is sufficient for him. 65:3. Stick to patience and to trust in God in the company of those who do good to others, as surely God has promised you rewards for this, as He says, and thus do we reward those who do good to others. 6:85. God will love you on account of this virtue, because He has said, and Allah loves the doers of good to others. 3:133. Thus, patience is the source of all virtues and all kinds of safety in this world and in the hereafter, and through it the believer rises to the state of cheerful surrender and reconcilement. 87. Futuh al Ghaib. To the will of God and then attains to the state of merging in the acts of God, the state of Badaliyat or Ghaibit. So beware that you do not miss it, so that you may not be abased in this world and in the hereafter, with the result that prosperity of both these passes away from you. The 31st Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, when you find in your heart any hatred or love for a person, examine his actions in the light of the Book of God and the practice of the Holy Prophet. Then if they are hateful in the eyes of these two authorities, be happy to be in accord with God and his Prophet. If his actions happen to be pleasing to God and his Prophet and you are inimical to him, then know that surely you are a follower of your low desire. You are hating him on account of your low desire, being unjust to him on account of your hatred for him, and rebelling against God, the mighty, the glorious, and against his Prophet, and opposing both these authorities. So turn towards God, repenting for your hatred, and ask from him love for that man and for others from among the friends of God and his wallace and his selected ones, and from among the pious men among his servants, that you should be in harmony with God in loving him. You should act in the same way in the case of one whom you love. That is to say, you should examine his actions in the light of the Book of God and the practice of his Prophet. Then if he happens to be dear to these two authorities, you should love him. But if they are hateful to him, you should hate him, so that you may not love him through your low desires and hate him. Surely you are commanded to oppose your low desires. God says, and follow not that low desire, lest it lead thee astray from the path of Allah. 38, 26. 88. Futuh al Ghaib. The 32nd Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, how often do you say, whoever I love, my love for him does not endure? Separation intervenes between us, either through absence, or through death, or through enmity, or through destruction or loss of wealth. So you are told, do you not know, O believer in God, on whom God has conferred gifts, the one to whom God has paid attention, the one whom God guards with jealous care? Do you not know that surely God is jealous? He has created you for himself, and you are desirous of belonging to somebody other than him. Have you not heard his words? He loves them, and they love him. 554. As also his commandment. And I have not created the jinn and the men, except that they should serve me. 51, 56. Or have you not heard the saying of the Holy Prophet, when God loves a servant he puts him in a trial, then if he shows patience, he looks after him. He was asked, O Prophet of God, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, and what is his looking after? He said, he does not leave for him any wealth or any children. This is because when he has any wealth or children whom he loves, his love for his Lord becomes divided. Then it becomes diminished and scattered. Then it is distributed between God and others, and Allah does not brook any partner, and he is jealous, and he is powerful over all things and predominant over all. So he destroys his partner and annihilates it in order to monopolize the heart of his servant for his own self, to the exclusion of all others. Then will be proved the truth of the words of God, he will love them and they will love him. 554. Till at last the heart becomes clear of all partners of God and idols, such as wife and wealth and children and enjoyments. 89. Futuh al Ghaib. And fashions and longing for dominions and kingdoms, for miracles and spiritual states and spiritual stages and stations, and gardens of heaven and spiritual grades and nearness to God, no purpose will remain in the heart and no desire. Then the heart will become like a hold vessel in which no liquid can stay, because it is now broken by the act of God. Whenever any purpose grows in it, the act of God and his jealousy break it. Then screens of dignity and might and awe are hung round it, and besides this, trenches of greatness and might are dug. Thus, no desires about anything will be able to approach the heart. Nothing of wealth and children and wife and friends and miracles and authority and power of interpretation will be able to do any harm to the heart. Surely all these things will remain outside the heart, and therefore they will not excite the jealousy of God. Rather, all these things will be a sign of honor from God for his servant and his kindness towards him and his blessings and sustenance and things beneficial to those who go to him. Thus these people are honored by this and shown mercy by it and protected through this investment of honor from God, who will be their guard and police and shelter and intercessor in this life and in the hereafter. The 33rd Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, there are 4 kinds of men. One is who has no tongue and no heart, and he is a man of ordinary position, dull and lowly, who does not count with God, and one who has nothing good in him. He and people like him are like chaff which has no weight, unless God covers them with his mercy and guides their heart towards faith in himself, and moves the organs of their body in obedience to himself. Beware that we do not become one of them, and do not entertain them, nor mind them, nor yet stand among them. These are the people who incur the chastisement and wrath and anger of God. They are the inhabitants of fire. And 90. Futuh al Ghaib. Its inmates. We seek refuge in God from them. You should, on the contrary, be equipped with divine knowledge and be among the teachers of good and guides for religion and its leaders and inviters to it. Therefore, beware that you should come to them and invite them to obedience to God and warn them against sinning against God. Thus you will be a fighter in the cause of God and will be given the rewards of prophets and messengers of God. The Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said to Ali, if God gives guidance to one person through your guiding him, it is better for you than that on which the sun rises. The other kind of person has got a tongue but no heart. He speaks on wisdom but does not act according to it. He calls people to God but himself flees from him. He abhors defects in others but he himself persists with similar defects in himself. He shows to others his piety but contends with God by committing major sins. And when he is alone he is like a wolf in clothes. Here is a person against whom the Holy Prophet has warned. He said, the thing to be most afraid of, and which I am afraid of in respect of my followers, is the evil learned men. We seek refuge in God from such learned men. So you should keep away from such a man and run away from him, lest you should be carried away by the sweetness of his talk, and then the fire of his sin will burn you and the filth of his inner self, and his heart should kill you. There is a third kind of man who has a heart but no tongue, and he is a believer. God has screened him away from his creation and hung round him his curtains, and given him an insight into the blemishes of his own self, and enlightened his heart, and made him aware of the mischiefs of mixing with people, and of the evil of talking and speaking, and who has 91. Futuh al Ghaib. Become sure that safety is in silence and retirement in a corner, as the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, whoever kept silent attained to salvation. And as further he has said, surely the service of God consists of 10 parts, 9 of which are in silence. Thus this man is a friend of God in his secrets, protected, possessing safety and plenty of intelligence, companion of the beneficent God, blessed with his favors, and as for good, everything good is with him. Therefore, you must keep company with such a man and mix with him and render him service and endear yourself to him by fulfilling the needs which he may feel, and provide him with things which will give ease and comfort. If you do these things, God will love you and choose you and include you in the company of his friends and pious servants together with his blessings, if it pleases him. The fourth kind of man is one who is invited to the world invisible, clothed in dignity, as it is related in the tradition. Whoever learns and acts upon his learning and imparts it to others is invited to the world invisible and made great. Such a man is possessed of the knowledge of God, and his sign and his heart is made the repository of the rare things of his knowledge, and he intimates to him such secrets as he has kept hidden from others, and he has selected him and drawn him towards himself, and guided him and raised him towards himself, and expanded his heart for the acceptance of these secrets and points of knowledge, and made him a worker in his cause and a inviter of God's servants to the path of virtue, and a warner against the chastisement of evil deeds, and an argument of God in their midst. A guide and a rightly guided man, an intercessor and one whose intercession has been accepted, a truthful man and one who verifies the truth of others, a deputy of God's prophets and messengers, may the blessings of God be on them. 92. Futuh al Ghaib. So this man is the end and culminating point of mankind, and there is no station above this, except that of prophethood. It is your duty to beware that you do not oppose such a man and be averse to him and avoid accepting him, and be attentive towards what he says and admonishes. So, verily, safety lies in what such a man says and also in his company, and destruction and misguidance be in what is besides him, except such men to whom God gives power and assistance towards truth and mercy. I have divided mankind for you into 4 divisions. Now, you have to look at your own self if you have an observant mind, and save yourself in the light of it, if you are anxious to save it, having love for it. May God guide you and us towards what he loves and is pleased with, in this world and the hereafter. The 34th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, How strange that you should be angry with your Lord and blame him and find fault with him and ascribe to him, the mighty, the glorious, injustice and delay in the matter of allotting sustenance and sufficiency and in the removal of calamities. Do you not know that for every course of events there is an appointed time, and for every calamity there is a point of consummation? It can neither be made earlier nor deferred. The times of calamities do not change so as to give place to comfort, and the times of difficulties do not change into that of affluence. Adopt the best of manners and stick to silence and patience and cheerful submission and reconcilement with your Lord, and repent for your angry attitude towards God and your accusations of him in the matter of his action. In the presence of God there is no room for demanding one's due in full nor for retaliation without incurring a sin. Contrary is the response to the urge of nature, such as is to be found in the case of mutual relationship between his servants. He, the mighty and the glorious, is absolutely alone from. 93. Futuh al Ghaib. Eternity, existing before everything, and he created the things and created their benefits and harms. So he knows their beginning and their end and their ultimate object and their sequel. He, the mighty and the glorious, is wise in the matter of his action and is firm in his fashioning of things, and there is no contradiction in his acts. And he does not do anything without any meaning and does not create anything without any purpose or in a playful manner. It is not proper that any defect or blame should be ascribed to his deeds. Rather, you should wait for relief if you feel exhausted in your reconcilement with him and in exhibiting a spirit of cheerful submission and of merging in his action, till the time of the decree of providence reaches its appointed time, and the trying conditions change into their opposite by the passage of time and the consummation of the course of events, in the same way as the winter attains its consummation and makes room for summer, and the night attains consummation and makes room for the day. Thus, if you ask for the light of day during the increasing darkness of the evening, it will not be given to you. Rather, the darkness of the night will increase till it reaches its end and the time of dawn approaches. The day comes with its light whether you ask for and desire it, or keep silent over it and dislike it. So if you want the return of the night at that time, your prayer will not be granted because you have asked for an untimely thing. You will be left to lament and be deprived and be made disgusted and ashamed. So leave all this and stick to reconcilement and good faith with your Lord and graceful patience. What is yours will not be snatched away from you, and what is not yours will not be given to you. By my faith it is so, provided that you ask from God and seek his help by prayer and entreaty, worshipping him and obeying him and carrying out his orders in pursuance of his commandment. Call on me and I will accept your prayers. 40, 60. And another commandment of his, apply to God for his favor, 432, and of similar other verses of the Holy Quran and sayings of the Holy Prophet. 94. Futuh al Ghaib. You will pray to him and he will accept your prayer in its appointed time and at the end of its appointed term and when he wills, and also if there is any advantage for you in this, in your worldly life and in the world hereafter, or if the same accords with his dispensation and with the end of the fixed term. Do not blame him when he delays the acceptance of your prayer, and do not get exhausted in your prayer, for verily if you do not gain, you do not lose anything either. If he does not accept your prayer immediately in this world's life, he will give you a deferred reward in the life to come. There is a tradition handed down from the Holy Prophet which purports to say that on the day of resurrection the servant of God will find in his book of deeds some good deeds which he will not recognize. then he will be told that these are in exchange for his prayers in his worldly life that were not destined to be accepted, or something to the effect, as is narrated in the tradition. The least of your spiritual state should be that you should be remembering your Lord, adhering strictly to your faith in his unity while asking anything from him, and that you should not ask from anybody else and not carry your need to anybody except him. So, at all times, during the night or day, in health or in illness, in adversity or in prosperity, in difficulty or in ease, you are in either of two conditions. 1. Either you refrain from asking and remain satisfied and reconciled and surrendered to his act like a dead body before one who gives it the funeral bath, or like a suckling babe in the hand of a nurse, or like a polo ball before the polo rider who makes it turn and revolve with his polo stick. Thus does providence turn as it likes. If it happens to be a blessing, thanks and praise go forth from you, and an increase comes from him, the mighty, the glorious, in the gift, as he has said. If you are grateful, I will give you more. 14:7. But if it is an adversity, patience and reconcilement go forth from you with the help of the strength given by him, and 95. Futuh al Ghaib. Firmness of heart and help and blessing and mercy from him. He, the mighty, the glorious, says, surely God is with the patient. 2:153. That is to say, he is with the patient with his favors such as help and strength, and as he also says, if you help Allah, he will help you and makes firm your feet. 47:7. When you have helped the cause of God, by opposing your low desires and by giving up finding fault with him and refraining from being displeased with his action with regard to yourself, and you become an enemy to your own self for the sake of God, ready to strike it with the sword whenever it moves with its unbelief and polytheism, and you cut off its head with your patience and reconcilement to your Lord, as also with your satisfaction with his act and promise and pleasure with both of them, when you do so, God will be your helper. And as for blessing and mercy, there is his word. And give good news to the patient, who when a misfortune befalls them say, surely we are Allah's and to him we shall return. Those are they on whom are blessings and mercy from their Lord, and those are the followers of the right course. 2:157. 2. The alternative condition is that you supplicate before God with prayer and humble entreaties, regarding him as great, and being obedient to his orders. Yes, do call on God, and it is keeping a thing in its proper place, because he, himself, urges you to ask of him and not to be angry with him, in the event of the acceptance of your prayer being deferred to its appointed time. So, take note of the difference between the two conditions and do not go beyond the bounds of both, because there is no other condition besides these. Beware lest you should be among the unjust ones, who transgress the limits. In that case he will destroy you and he will not care, as he destroyed those people who have gone before in this world by intensifying his calamities, and in the next life by a painful chastisement. Glory. 96. Futuh al Ghaib. Be to God, the great, O knower of my condition. On you is my reliance. The 35th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, abstinence from unlawful things is incumbent on you, otherwise the rope of destruction is coiled round you. You can never get out of its tangle unless God covers you with his mercy. There is an authentic report of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, that the foundation of religion is abstinence from unlawful things and its destruction is in greed, and that whoever goes round a protected pasture land is only too likely to help himself to it as cattle pasturing freely by the side of a cornfield are only too likely to stretch their mouth towards it. It is unlikely that the cornfield would remain safe from them. Umar ibn Khattab, may God be pleased with him, is reported to have said, we used to abstain from 9/10 of lawful things in the fear lest we should fall in the zone of unlawful things. It is reported of Abu Bakr Siddiq, may God be pleased with him, that he said, we used to avoid 70 doors of permissible things for fear of getting involved in sin. These exalted personages did so just to be away from any proximity to unlawful things, and in doing so they acted on the saying of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. Beware. Verily every king has a protected pasture land, and the pasture land of God is his forbidden things. Thus whoever goes round the pasture land is likely to get into it, but one who enters the fort of the king and passes through the first, then the second and then the third gate till he 97. Futuh al Ghaib approaches the threshold, is better than one who stands at the first door which is contiguous to the open countryside. So if the third door is shut against him, it will not harm him, as he is still behind two doors of the palace, and he has the treasury of the king and his army near him. But as for the man who is at the first gate, if this one is closed upon him, he remains alone in the open land, and he may be seized by wolves and enemies, and may be among the destroyed ones. Similarly, if one who treads the path of God's appointed duties and makes it incumbent upon himself, and the help of power and concession is taken away from him, and he is cut off from these, he will still be on leave, and he will not be outside the law. So when death overtakes him, he will be found on obedience and service, and his good work will be borne testimony to. If one stands on leave and permission and does not advance towards the obligatory duties, and if the resource is snatched away and he is cut off from his help, low desires and passiveness of the animal self will overpower him. He will indulge in unlawful things and get out of the law and join the company of devils, who are the enemies of God and shall have gone astray from the right path. So if death overtakes him before repentance, he will be among the perished ones unless God covers him with his mercy and favors. So every danger lies in standing on leave and permission, and every safety in standing on obligatory duties. The 36th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, "Make your life after death your capital money, and your worldly life its profit. Spend your time first of all in acquiring your life after death. Then if any surplus time is left, spend it in acquiring your worldly life, in seeking your livelihood. Do not make your worldly life your capital money, and your life after death your profit, so as to spend any surplus time left in obtaining your life after death, and to fulfill the obligations of 5 prayers in such a way, as if putting all together in a single." 98. Futuh al Ghaib. Melting pot, dropping its different parts and upsetting the order of various obligations without the ritual bending and prostration, and without restful pause between different parts, or when you are exhausted and agitated you take to sleep, leaving the whole thing unattended, like a dead body during the night, and whiling away the day in obedience to your animal self and your animal desire and your devil, and selling your hereafter in exchange for your worldly life, acting like a slave of the animal self and its riding beast. You are commanded to ride on your animal self, and to discipline it, and to exercise it, and to traverse on its back the paths of safety, that is the way to the life eternal and to the obedience to its Lord. But you have acted unjustly towards it by accepting its urges, and you have handed over to it its reins and followed it in its low desires and in its enjoyments, and you have made an alliance with its devil and its passion, so you have missed the best thing of this life and of the hereafter, and have incurred loss in respect of both of them, and thus you enter on the day of judgment the poorest of men and the greatest loser in respect of religion, and without obtaining, by following it, most of your allotted portion in this world's life. On the other hand, if you had traversed with it the path of the hereafter and used it as your capital money, you would have gained in your worldly life as well as in the hereafter, and your destined portion of this world's life would have come to you with all its pleasantness, and you would have been secure and respected. Thus the Holy Prophet has said, "Surely God gives felicity in this world's life on the intention pertaining to the hereafter, whereas the felicity of the hereafter is not given on the intention pertaining to this world's life. How can it be otherwise? The intention for the hereafter is obedience to God, because intention is the very soul of service and its very being. So when you obey God with your abstinence in this world's life and with seeking the abode of the hereafter, you become among the chosen ones of God and the people of." 99. Futuh al Ghaib. Obedience to, and love for Him, and the life hereafter is obtained by you, and that is paradise and nearness to God. The world will be at your service, and the portion allotted to you from it will be given to you in full, because everything is subordinate to its creator and its master. But if you get engrossed in the worldly life and turn your face from the hereafter, the Lord will be angry with you. You will lose the hereafter and the world will be disobedient to you, and will put you in trouble and difficulty in the matter of allowing your allotted portion to reach you on account of the anger of God towards you, because it is owned by God, so it abases whoever is disobedient to him. Then it is that the truth of a saying of the Holy Prophet is established. The saying is this: the world and the hereafter are two co-wives. If you please any of the two, the other becomes angry with you. God, the Mighty, the Glorious, says, of you were some who desired this world, and of you were some who desired the hereafter. 3:151. These are called the children of the world and the children of the hereafter, respectively. See, then, of which these two you are children, and to which of these two tribes you like to belong while you are in this world. Then when you pass on to the other life, there will be one party in the heaven and the other party in the hell. One section of people shall remain standing at their own place in the midst of prolonged reckoning on a day which, as the word of God says, is the equivalent of 15,000 years. Then there will be another section of people who shall be staying by the dining table, on which will be very good food and fruits and honey whiter than ice, as it has been narrated in the Hadith. They shall be looking at their residence in heaven until, when God will be free from the account of the people, they will enter heaven, they shall find their way towards 100. Futuh al Ghaib. Their residences, just as a man in this world finds his way to his residence. Evidently, these people attain to this position only by their discarding the world and by their occupying themselves with, and their attempt to get to the hereafter and the Master, and those other people are involved in the accounts and various kinds of difficulties and humiliations only on account of their preoccupations with the world and their attachment to it, and their indifference towards the hereafter and the scantiness of their attention towards its affairs and their forgetfulness of the day of judgment and what is to happen to them in the future among the things mentioned in the Book of God and the traditions of the Holy Prophet. So look at your own self with the look of mercy and affection, and choose for it the one that is better among the two groups, and keep it away from bad associates and from the disobedient from among men and jinns, and make the Book of God and the Sunnah your guide, and look at these two authorities with contemplation and meditation, and act on them, and do not be deceived by mere talk, and by greed. God says, whatever the messenger gives you, accept it, and whatever he forbids you, abstain therefrom, and keep your duty to Allah. 59:7. Do not oppose him so that you cease acting on what he has brought. Do not make innovation from your own self, either with regard to deeds, or with regard to service, as God says in respect of a people who went away from the right path. And as for monkery, they innovated it. We did not prescribe it to them. 57:27. Accordingly, he purified his prophet and kept him away from falsehood. Thus he says, nor does he speak out of desire. It is naught but revelation that is revealed. 53:34. 101. Futuh al Ghaib. Meaning, whatever he has brought to you, it is from me, and not from his desire and self, so follow it. He further says, say if you love Allah, then follow me, Allah will love you. 3:30. It is clear that the path of love is to follow him in word and deed. Thus the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, says, earning is my way and reliance on God is my state. So you are between his practice and his state. If your faith is weak, you should take to earning, which is his practice, and if your faith is strong, you should adopt the state, which is reliance on God. God the Mighty, the Glorious, says, they rely on him. 10:84. He also says, and whoever trusts in Allah, he is sufficient for him. 65:3. He further says, surely Allah loves those who trust in him. 3:158. So he commands you to have trust in him and insists on your sticking to it, just as his prophet has been commanded to observe the same. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, says, whoever does a deed on which there is no commandment of ours is rejected. This covers livelihood and deeds and words. We have no prophet except him whom we can follow, and no book except the Quran on which we can act. Do not, therefore, go beyond these two, lest you should perish and lest your desires and the devil should lead you astray. And follow not low desire, lest it lead thee astray from the path of Allah. 38:26. 102. Futuh al Ghaib. Safety lies in the Book of God and the practice of the Holy Prophet, and destruction in what is besides them, and with the help of these two the servant of God progresses towards the state of wilayat, of bidayat and of gliorthiat. The 37th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, Why is that I see you, O believer, envying your neighbor for his food and drink and dress and wife, and his house of residence and for his enjoying himself on his affluence, because you find him in possession of blessings of his master and of the portion allotted to him? Do you not know that it weakens your faith and causes you to fall in the eye of your master and makes you loathsome to him? Have you not heard the saying narrated from the Holy Prophet that Allah says, An envious person is an enemy of our blessing? And have you not heard the saying of the Holy Prophet, Verily envy eats up virtues as fire eats up fuel? Then why are you envious of him, O poor man? Is it for his portion, or for yours? If you envy him for the portion allotted to him by God, you come under the operation of his word. We portion not among them their livelihood in the life of this world. 43:32. You have most surely been unjust to this man who is enjoying the blessing of his Lord with which he has specially favored him, and which he has appointed as his portion and has not left any share in it for anyone else. Who will be more unjust than yourself, and the more miserly and more foolish and more stupid? If you envy him on account of your portion, then you have betrayed the utmost ignorance, because your portion will not be given to anybody else and will not be transferred from you to anybody else. God is free from such injustice. He says, My sustenance cannot be changed, nor am I in the least unjust to the servants. 50:29. 103. Futuh al Ghaib. Surely God has not been so unjust to you as to take from you what he has allotted to you and to give it to somebody else. Such a thought only betrays your ignorance and is an injustice to your brother. It is better for you that you should be envious of the earth, which is a storehouse of treasures and buried wealth, consisting of various kinds of gold, silver and precious stones out of what had been hoarded by past kings, of Ad and Thamud and kings and emperors of Persia and Rome, than that you should envy your brother. Your likeness is only like that of a man who sees a king with his majesty and army and power and kingdom, exercising control over the lands and collecting their taxes and exploiting them for his own benefit and enjoying life with various kinds of enjoyments and gratification of desires, but he does not envy this king. Instead he sees a wild dog which serves a dog from among the dogs of that king and remains with it, and passes day and night with it and is given the leavings and crumbs of food from the royal kitchen, so he lives on that. This man begins envying this dog, and becomes hostile to him and desires his death and wants meanly to be in its place after its death without being indifferent towards the world or developing a religious attitude towards life and contentment with his own lot. Is there any man in the whole course of time more foolish than this man and more stupid and more ignorant? Had you known, O poor man, what your neighbor will have to face in the future in the form of a lengthy account on the day of resurrection if he has not obeyed God in what he has given him out of his blessings, and in the matter of fulfilling the obligations due to him, and if he has not obeyed his orders and observed his prohibitions while enjoying his blessings, and has not used them as an aid to his service and obedience to him, that he will face such things as will make him desire that he was not given even a particle of these enjoyments and had never seen any enjoyment at all. Have you not heard what has come down in the tradition? 104. Futuh al Ghaib. Surely there will be parties of people who will desire on the day of resurrection that their flesh might be severed from their body by means of scissors on their seeing the recompense of the sufferers of troubles. Your neighbor will desire on the day of judgment to be in your place in this world's life, on seeing his own lengthy account and his own difficulties, and his standing 50,000 years in the heat of the sun of that day on account of what he has enjoyed of the comfort of this world's life, while you will be keeping aside from all this under the shade of the throne of God, eating, drinking, enjoying, happy and joyful and comfortably placed on account of your patience in the face of the difficulties of this world's life and lack of means, and its troubles and its poverty and its neediness, and on account of your contentment with your lot and your reconcilement to your Lord in what he has decreed and ordered in the matter of your poverty, and of the affluence of others and of your ill health and others' health, and of your difficulties and others' ease and comfort and of your abasement and others' honor. May God make you and us among those who show patience in the face of calamities and feel grateful for his blessings and who resign and entrust their affairs to the Lord of the earth and the heaven. The 38th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, whoever executes the work of his Lord with sincerity and earnestness, dreads whatever is besides him day and night. O people, do not claim what you do not possess. Proclaim the unity of God, and do not associate anything with him and make yourself the target of the arrows of providence which will strike you not to kill, but to injure, and whoever perishes for the sake of God receives his compensation from him. 105. Futuh al Ghaib. The 39th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, to take anything on the basis of desire without any order from God is swerving from duty in opposition to truth, and to take anything without being prompted by desire is harmony and agreement with truth, and to discard it is insincerity and hypocrisy. The 40th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, do not expect to be included in the company of spiritual people unless you have become an enemy of your whole self and have become absolutely separated from all the organs of your body and all your limbs and have cut off all connections with your existence, with your movements and restful conditions, with your hearing and seeing, with your speaking and holding, with your effort and action and your intelligence and with everything that proceeds from you before your spiritual existence comes into being in you. All that will be found in you after the spiritual existence is breathed into you because all these things constitute a screen between you and your Lord. So then you become a soul pure and simple, secret of secrets and unseen of the unseen, positively distinct from all things in secret and recognizing everything as an enemy and a screen and darkness, just as Abraham the friend of God, peace be on him, says, surely they are an enemy to me, but not so the Lord of the worlds who is the only friend. 26:77. He said this in respect of the idols, so you should consider your whole being and your parts, as idols together with the rest of the creation and should not obey anything out of them and should not follow them at all. Then you will be endowed with secret and divine knowledge and rare things in it, and will be gifted with the power of creation and miracle working which. 106. Futuh al Ghaib is of the type of power to be found in the possession of believers in heaven. You will be in this condition as if you were resurrected after death in the hereafter. You will be wholly a manifestation of the power of God, and will speak through God, and hold through God, and walk through God, and understand through God, and will have your comfort and rest through God. Thus you will be blind to everything besides him, you will be deaf to everything besides him, you will not find anything existing besides him so long as you observe the limits of law and conform to the injunctions and prohibitions. Then if anything is amiss in you from the requirements of law, you should know that you are being tried and tempted and played with by the devil. So return to the commandment of the law and stick to it and keep yourself clear of the low desires, because every fact which is not confirmed by the law is unbelief. The 41st Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, we shall set forth for you a parable on affluence, and we will say, do you not see the king taking an ordinary man and making him a governor and putting him in charge of a certain town, and giving him the robe of honor and flags and banners and drums and army, and the man passes some time in this condition till when he feels secure in it and begins to believe in its permanence and to take pride in it, and forgets his previous condition and handicaps and humiliation and poverty and obscurity thereof, and he is seized with pride and vanity. There comes from the king the order of his dismissal, and the king demands an explanation for the crimes he has committed and for his transgressing his injunctions and prohibitions. So the king imprisons him in a narrow and dark prison and prolongs his imprisonment, and the man continues to remain in this suffering and humiliation and poverty, in consequence of which his pride and vanity melt and his self is broken and the fire of his desires. 107. Futuh al Ghaib is extinguished, and all this happens before the eyes of the king and within his knowledge, after which he becomes favorably inclined towards the man and looks at him with compassion and mercy and orders his release from the prison together with acts of kindness towards him and the robe of honor and the restoration of the governorship and that of another city like this. And he gives all these things to the man as a free gift. So he continues in this state of governorship which remains steady and pure and sufficient and blessed. This is the case of a believer when God draws him near and chooses him. He opens before the eye of his heart door of his mercy, blessing and reward. Then a believer sees with his inner heart which no eye has seen and no ear has heard and which has not occurred to any human heart in respect of the study of the unseen things of the kingdom of heavens and earth and of nearness to God, and of the sweet and nice words and happy promise and lavish affection, and of the acceptance of prayer and truthfulness, and of the fulfillment of promise and the words of great wisdom thrown on his heart which express themselves through his tongue, and along with these he completes on this man his favors externally over his body and his organs in the shape of food and drink and dress and lawful wife and other permissible things and the paying of regard to the bounds of law and to the formal acts of devotion. So God maintains this condition for his believing servant who is drawn towards him for a considerable time until when the servant feels secure in it, and becomes deceived by it and believes in its permanence, God opens for him doors of calamity and various kinds of difficulties in respect of life and property and wife and children, and removes from him all that he had bestowed upon him before this, so that he is left astonished and helpless and broken down and cut off from his people. If he looks at his external circumstances, he sees things which appear evil to him, he sees what grieves him. And if he asks God to remove his trouble, his petition does not meet with. 108. Futuh al Ghaib. Any acceptance, and if he asks for any good promise he does not get it quickly, and if he promises anything he is not informed about its fulfillment, and if he sees any dream he does not succeed in interpreting it and getting it its truth, and if he intends to get back towards people he does not get any means to it, and if any alternative appears to him and he acts on it he is immediately overtaken by chastisement, and the hands of people get hold of his body and their tongues assail his honor, and if he wants to free himself from the obligation of the condition in which he finds himself, and to go back to the condition previous to his acceptance, such a prayer is not accepted, and if he asks for cheerful submission and delight and happy living in the midst of the calamities with which he is surrounded, even this is not granted. Then it is that his self begins to melt and the low desires begin to disappear and his intentions and longings begin to pass away and the existence of everything is reduced to naught. This state of affairs is prolonged for him and even made to increase in intensity and severity and stress, until, when the servant passes away altogether from human characteristics and attributes and remains merely a soul, he hears an inner voice calling out to him. Urge with thy foot, here is a cool washing place and a drink. 3842. As it was said to Prophet Job, peace be upon him. Then God makes for him oceans of his mercy and compassion and tenderness and his happiness and sweet smell of knowledge of reality and subtle points of his knowledge, and opens for him doors of his favors and lavish care and extends the hands of people towards him for gifts and service in all conditions of life, and releases the tongues of people for his praise and applause and good renown in every affair, and urges the feet of people to come to him and causes the necks of people to bow before him and makes kings and chiefs subservient to him and completes on him his favors, internal and external, and takes charge of his. 109. Futuh al Ghaib. External upbringing, through his creation and other blessings, and perfects his inner upbringing by his kindness and favor, and makes this state continue for him till he meets him. Then he makes him enter in what no eye has seen and no ear has heard and what has not occurred to the heart of any man, as God says. No soul knows what refreshment of the eyes is hidden for them, a reward for what they did. 32:17. The 42nd Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, the spirit of man can be in two conditions and there is no third one, the state of happiness and the state of trouble. When it is in trouble, there is anxiety and complaint and displeasure and criticism and finding fault with God, the mighty, the exalted, lacking in patience and cheerful submission and reconcilement. On the contrary, there is the displaying of bad manners, the sin of associating the creation and worldly means with the Creator, and finally unbelief. When it is in comfort, it is a victim of greed and insolence and predominance of low desires and enjoyments. Whenever it gratifies a desire it wants another and belittles what it already possesses of blessing, then it finds fault and defect in these blessings and asks for one better than these and brighter as well, out of what is not in its lot, and turns away from what is allotted to it and thus involves the man in a long series of troubles, and it does not feel contented with what is in its hands and what is allotted to it and lands into distress and in places of destruction in the midst of a long series of trouble which has no end either in this world or in the hereafter. As it has been said, verily the most distressing of punishment is seeking what is not allotted. Thus when he is in trouble it does not desire anything except its removal, and forgets all pleasures and desires and delightful things and does not ask anything of these. Then when 110. Futuh al Ghaib. He is blessed with an easy and comfortable life, he returns to arrogance and greed and disobedience and recalcitrant turning away from obedience to his Lord and plunges in his sinful occupation. He forgets the misfortune in which he had lately been and the calamity to which he had been a victim. So he is hurried back to a state worse than that in which he was, with various kinds of calamities and troubles as a punishment for what he had perpetrated and committed and for major sins, in order to keep him away from these and restrain him from sinful acts in future, after it was found that ease and comfort would not reform him but that his safety lay in calamities and difficulties. If he had observed good manners when the calamity was removed from him and had held fast to obedience and thankfulness and cheerful acceptance of his lot, it would have been better for him in this world and the hereafter. Then he would have obtained an increase in the comforts of life and the pleasure of God and a happy life and resourcefulness and pleasure. So whoever desires safety in this world's life and in the hereafter he should cultivate patience and cheerful submission and avoid complaining against people and obtain all his necessities from his Lord, the mighty, the glorious, and make it an obligation to obey him, and should wait for ease and be exclusively devoted to him, the mighty, the glorious. He, in any case, is better than those besides him in the whole of his creation. More often than not, the deprivation caused by him is a gift, his punishment a blessing, his calamity a remedy, his promise a cash, his credit is an existing state, his word is a deed. Undoubtedly, his word and his commandment, when he intends to do anything, is only saying to it, be, and it comes into being. So all his actions are good and based on wisdom and expedience, except that he keeps the knowledge of his. 111. Futuh al Ghaib. Expedience hidden from his servants and he is alone in this. So it is better and proper for the servants to be in a state of cheerful submission and resignation and to be engaged in service to him by carrying out his orders and observing his prohibitions and being resigned to his allotment and by discarding such occupations as pertain to the nourishment of the creation, because this privilege is the source of all allotments and the point of their coming into force and their basis, and to be silent on why, how, and when, of happenings, and to refrain from ascribing a fault to God in all his actions and inactions. This statement derives its validity from a hadith narrated by Abdul ibn Abbas who is quoted by Atta ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas is reported to have said, I was riding behind the Prophet of God, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, when he said to me, my boy, guard the obligations to God, God will look after you, guard the obligations to God, you will find him in front of you. So when you ask from God, and when you seek assistance, seek it from him. The pen is dried after writing down all that is to happen, and if the servants of God strive to benefit you with anything which God has not decreed for you, they will not be able to do it, and if all the servants of God strive to harm you with anything which God has not decreed for you, they will not be able to do so. So if you can act on the commandments of God with sincerity of faith, do it, and if you are unable to do so, then surely it is better to be patient on what you dislike, but there is much good in that. Know that the help of God comes through patience and comfortable circumstances, with distress, and that difficulty is accompanied by ease. So it behoves every believer that he should make this hadith a mirror for his heart and its internal and external garment and its motto, and should act on it in all his actions and moments of pause so that he may remain safe in this world and the hereafter and may receive honor in both of them by the mercy of God, the Exalted. 112. Futuh al Ghaib. The 43rd Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, "Whoever asks anything from men does so only through his ignorance of God and weakness of faith and knowledge of reality, and lack of certainty and lack of patience, and whoever refrains from asking does so only through the abundance of his knowledge of God, the mighty, the glorious, and through the strength of his faith and of certainty, and through an incessant increase in his knowledge of God every moment, and his shyness from him, the mighty, the glorious." The 44th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, "Surely every prayer of the man of spiritual knowledge to God, the mighty, the glorious, is not granted, and every promise made to him is not redeemed so that he may not meet with destruction through over-optimism. Because there is no spiritual knowledge except that he enjoys the nearness of God, and his state and station is that he does not wish for anything but God and does not incline to and feel satisfied with anything which is besides him and is not delighted with anything that is besides him. Thus the asking, on the part of the devotee, for the acceptance of his prayer and the fulfillment of the promise made to him, is opposed to his path and not in accordance with his state. There are two reasons for this. One is that he may not be overcome by hope and delusion through the subtle planning of God and become unmindful of the requisite amount of good behavior in his approach to God and thus meet his destruction. The second is that it may amount to associating something with his Lord, the mighty, the glorious, which is besides him, because there is no one in the world absolutely free from sin, except the prophets. It is for this reason that he does not always grant the prayers and fulfill the promises made to the devotee, lest he should ask anything urged by his own nature without any. 113. Futuh al Ghaib. Reference to any obedience to the commandments of God in which lies the chance of polytheism, and there are numerous chances of polytheism shirk in every state, step and station of a spiritual pilgrim. But when the prayer is in accordance with the commandment, it is a thing which increases a man in his nearness to God, like prayer and fasting and other things among the obligatory and supererogatory duties of religion, because in this there is obedience to commandment. The 45th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, "Know that people are of two kinds. One kind is like he who is blessed with the good things of the world, whereas the other kind is like he who is tried with what his Lord has decreed for him. As for he who receives the good things, he is not free from the blemishes of sin and darkness in the enjoyment of what he is given. Such a person indulges in luxury on account of these things. When all of a sudden the decree of God comes and darkens his surrounding through various kinds of misfortunes and calamities in the shape of diseases and sufferings and troubles on his own life and property and on the members of his family and on his offspring, so that life becomes miserable through them, and it appears as if he had never enjoyed anything. He forgets the comforts and their sweetness. If the affluence continues together with wealth and position and male slaves and female slaves and security from enemies, he is in a state of blessing as if calamity has no existence for him. If he is in the midst of calamity, it seems as if happiness has no existence. All this is due to ignorance of his master. Thus if he had known that his master is absolutely free to do whatever he likes, and changes and transforms and sweetens and embitters and enriches and impoverishes and raises and lowers and gives honor and abases and gives life and causes death and gives a man precedence and pushes him to the background, if he had known all this, he could not have felt. 114. Futuh al Ghaib. Secure in the midst of happy worldly circumstances, and could not have felt proud on account of them, nor would he have despaired of happiness while in a state of calamity. This wrong behavior of his is due also to his ignorance of this world, which is in reality the place of trials and bitterness and ignorance and pain and darkness, and of which the rule is trial, and happiness only an exception. Thus the worldly life is like a tree of aloes, of which the first taste is bitter, whereas the ultimate consequence is sweet like honey, and no man can get at its sweetness unless he has first swallowed its bitter taste, and no one can reach the honey unless he has first showed patience with its bitterness. So whoever has shown patience in the trials of the world is entitled to taste its blessings. To be sure, a laborer is given his wages after his forehead has sweated, and his body has become tired, and his soul has become troubled, and his breast has become contracted, and his strength has departed, and his self has become humiliated, and his vanity has become broken through the service of a creature like himself. Thus, when one has drunk all this bitterness in full, then follows for him good food and fruits and dress and comforts and joy, even if they are small. The world, therefore, is a thing of which the first part is bitterness, like the top part of some honey kept in a vessel mixed with bitterness, so that an eater cannot get to the bottom of the vessel and eat the pure honey out of it until after he has tasted the top part of it. So, when the servant of God has persevered in the performance of the commandment of God, the mighty, the glorious, and in keeping away from his prohibitions, and in submitting before him, and in surrendering himself to the decrees of destiny, and when he has drunk the bitterness thereof, and has lifted the burden of it, and has struggled against his own low desires, and has discarded his own objectives, God gives to him, as a result of this, good life and loving attention and comfort and honor, and he becomes his guardian and feeds him just as a 115. Futuh al Ghaib. Suckling baby is fed without any effort on his part, and without his bearing any trouble and strain in this world and in the hereafter, in the same manner as an eater of the bitter top part of the previously mentioned honey relishes the bottom part of the contents of the vessel. So it is proper for the servant who has been favored by God not to feel secure from the trial of God by being enchanted by the favor, nor to feel sure as to its perpetuity, and thus become forgetful of gratitude for it and relax its restrictions by discarding thankfulness on account of it. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, has said, "Happy worldly circumstances is a savage thing, so restrain it by thankfulness." Thus, thankfulness of the blessing of wealth is to acknowledge it to the giver of it who is bountiful, that is God, to mention it to one's own self in all conditions of life, and to appropriate his favor and generosity, and also that one should not feel like having any claim on God, nor should one outstrip his bounds in this matter, nor should one discard his commandment in the matter, and after this by fulfilling the obligation to him in respect of zakat and expiation and votive offerings and alms, and by redressing the sufferings of the oppressed ones and helping the needy who are in difficulty and whose circumstances have changed from good to bad, that is to say, whose times of happiness and hopefulness have changed into hard and difficult ones. Thankfulness for the blessing of comfort in the limbs and the organs of the body is to use them in carrying out the commandments of God and in restraining oneself from things forbidden and from evil and sinful acts. This is how to protect blessings from passing away, and to irrigate its plant, and to accelerate the growth of its branches and leaves, and to help the beautification of its fruit, and to sweeten its taste, and to assure the safety of its end, and to make its eating tasteful, and to make its swallowing easy, and to make it. H6. Futuh al Ghaib. Yield comfort, and to enable it to maintain its growth in the body, and to make its blessing manifest itself on the organs of the body through various kinds of acts of obedience to God, such as will render one nearer to God and keep him in his remembrance, and will further make the servant enter in the life hereafter in the mercy of God, the mighty, the glorious, and will earn for him an abiding life in the gardens of paradise in the holy companionship of prophets, Siddiqs the truthful ones, and Shahids witnesses, and the Salis the righteous. A beautiful company are these. But if one does not act like this, and becomes enamored by what appears of the outward beauty of such a life, and becomes engrossed in the enjoyments of it, and becomes contented with the glitter of its mirage and the sparkle of its lightning-like appearance, all of which are like the blowing of cool breeze in the morning of a hot summer day, and like the softness of the skin of a serpent and scorpion, and becomes forgetful of the deadly poison which has been reposed in it, and of its deep deception and craftiness, all of which have as their aim to catch him and imprison him, and to destroy him. Such a man should be given the tidings of rejection and of speedy destruction and poverty, with abasement and humiliation in this world, and of chastisement in the long run in burning hell fire. As for the trial of man, sometimes it comes as a punishment for any violation of law and any sin which has been committed. At others, it comes with the object of removing the defects and refining the nature of man, and at still others it comes to raise a man in spiritual rank and to take him to high stages where he may join the people of spiritual knowledge who have experience of different states and positions, for whom the grace of the Lord of the creation and humanity has been allotted beforehand, who have been made to travel in the fields of calamities riding on the conveyance of tenderness and kindness, and whom he has soothed by the breeze of kind observation and loving watch in their movements and repose, because such a trial was not meant for destruction and for hurling them in the depths. H7. Futuh al Ghaib. Of hell, on the contrary, by means of these trials God has tested them for selection and choice, and has brought out from them the reality of faith, and has refined it and made it distinct from polytheism and boastings of self and hypocrisy, and has made a free gift, as a reward for them, of various kinds of knowledge, and secret and light. So when these people have become cleansed outwardly and inwardly, and when their hearts have become purified, he places them among the specially selected and the favorites of his court and companions of his mercy in this world and in the hereafter, in this world through their hearts, and in the hereafter through their bodies. Thus their calamities are in fact purifiers of the dirt of polytheism and breeders of connections with people and with the means of the world and with desires and wishes, and are instrumental in melting the boastfulness and greediness and the expectation of returns for obedience to commandments in the shape of high positions and stations in paradise and gardens of heaven. Now, the indication of trial by way of punishment is want of patience on the arrival of these trials and bewailing and complaints before people. On the other hand, the indication of trial by way of purification and removal of weaknesses is the presence of graceful patience without any complaint and expression of grief before friends and neighbors, and without any disgust with the performance of commandments and acts of obedience. And the indication of trial for the exaltation of rank is the presence of pleasure and amity and composure of mind and peacefulness with regard to the act of God, the Lord of the earth and heavens, and to completely lose oneself in this trial till the time of its removal in the course of time. 118. Futuh al Ghaib. The 46th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, there is a saying of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, who reports it from his Lord, that whoever engages himself in my remembrance and has no time to ask anything of me, I give him better than what is given to those who ask for things. This is so because when God wishes to choose and select a believer for his own purpose, he makes him pass through various spiritual conditions and tries him with various kinds of struggles and calamities. He makes him poor after affluence and compels him almost to the point of begging from people for his livelihood at times when all the various ways are closed for him. Then he saves him from begging for a livelihood but compels him almost to the point of borrowing from people. Then he saves him from borrowing as well, but compels him to work for his livelihood and makes it easy for him. Then he lives by his earning, which is after the example of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah upon him. But then he makes earning hard for him and commands him by revelation to beg from people, and this is a secret commandment which is known and recognized by the person concerned. He makes this begging an act of devotion for him and makes it sinful to discard it, and this in order that his vanity may disappear thereby and his ego be smashed, and this is a state of spiritual exercise. His begging is under divine compulsion and not by way of polytheism. Then he saves him from this and commands him to take to borrowing from people by an absolute commandment from which it is not possible to escape, as was the case with the previous kind of begging. He then changes him from this condition and severs him from people and makes his livelihood dependent on his asking it. H9. Futuh al Ghaib. From him. So he asks from everything that he needs from God, and he gives it to him and does not give anything if he keeps silent and refrains from praying for it. Then he changes him from the state of asking by tongue to that of asking by heart, so he asks from him everything that he needs by heart, and he gives him everything that he needs, so much so that if he asks by his tongue, he does not give it to him, or if he begs from people they either do not give anything to him. Then he makes him disappear completely, both from himself as well as from begging, either in open or in secret. He then rewards him with everything that puts right and reforms man, from among things that are eaten and drunk and worn and constitute other requirements a human life without his making an effort for it or without even the thought of it crossing his mind. Then he befriends him, and this is in accordance with the saying, "Surely my friend and guardian is God who has revealed the book, and he befriends the righteous people." 7:196. Now the word received from God by the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, becomes demonstrated in fact, that is, who has no time for asking anything, I give him more than what I have given to those who have asked, and this is the state of merging in God, and a state which belongs to the ordinary saints as well as the Abdul. At this stage he is given the power of creation, and all that he needs comes into existence by the permission of God, and to this effect there is a word of his in a book of his. O son of Adam, I am God, there is no God except me. I say to a thing, be, and it comes into existence. Obey me, so that if you say to a thing, be, it likewise will come into being. 120. Futuh al Ghaib. The 47th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, I had a dream in which an old man asked me, what makes a servant of God near to God? I said, this process has a beginning and an end. So the beginning of it is piety and godliness, and its end is to be pleased with God and to surrender oneself to his way and to rely on him entirely. The 48th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, it beseems a believer that he should first attend to the obligatory duties, and when he has accomplished them he should attend to the sunnah or the practice of the Holy Prophet. It is only when he has finished with these that he should take to the optional and extra duties. When a man has not performed his obligatory duties, if he attends to the sunnah it will be foolishness and stupidity, and if he attends to the sunnah and nafil or supererogatory duties before he has performed his obligatory duties, it will not be accepted of him and he will be abased. His example is like the example of a man who is asked by the king to serve him, but he does not come to him, the king, but stays to serve the chief who is the slave of the king, and his servant, and is under his power and sovereignty. It is reported by Hazrat Ali, son of Abu Talib, God be pleased with him, that the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, the instance of a man who says supererogatory prayers while he is in arrears with regard to his obligatory prayers is like the instance of a pregnant woman who carries, but when she approaches the time of delivery she aborts. Thus she no longer remains pregnant, nor does she become a mother. Similar is the case of the praying man from whom God does not accept supererogatory prayers so long as he has not. 121. Futuh al Ghaib. Performed his obligatory prayers. Also, the instance of a man who prays is like that of a businessman who cannot have any profit unless he has first laid his hand on the capital. Similarly, if a man says supererogatory prayers, these will not be accepted of him unless he has first attended to his obligatory prayers. The same is the case of one who discards the sunnah and takes to supererogatory prayers such as have not been included in the obligatory duties, nor have they been clearly stated and emphasized by any order. So among the obligatory duties is the discarding of unlawful things, of associating anything with God, of taking exception to his dispensation and decrees, of responding to the voice of people and following their wishes, and of turning away from the commandment of God and from obedience to him. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, has said, no obedience is due to any man where sinning against God is involved. The 49th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, whoever prefers sleep instead of spending the night in wakeful prayer, which is the cause of alertness, chooses an inferior thing in the one which attaches him to the dead and makes him indifferent towards all occupations, because sleep is the brother of death. It is therefore for that reason that sleep is unbecoming of God, because he is free from all defects. In the same way sleep cannot be predicated of the angels, because they remain very near to God, the mighty, the glorious. Similarly, sleep cannot be associated with the people of heaven, because they are in very exalted and holy, decent and honorable positions, and because that will cause a defect in their condition of life. Thus all good lies in keeping awake, and all evil lies in sleep and indifference towards work. So, whoever eats out of greed, eats too much, drinks too much and also sleeps too much, much that is good disappears. 122. Futuh al Ghaib. From him. And whoever eats even a little from unlawful things is like one who has eaten a lot from permissible things out of greed, because an unlawful thing beclouds the faith and darkens it, and when faith is darkened there is no prayer and no worship and no sincerity. Whoever eats a lot from lawful things under the commandment of God becomes like one who has eaten a little in the joy of worship and strength. A lawful thing is a light added unto light, whereas an unlawful thing is darkness added unto darkness, in which there is nothing good. So the eating of a lawful thing out of greed and without any reference to commandment is like the eating of an unlawful thing in a way, and it brings sleep in which there is no good. The 50th Discourse. He, may God be pleased with him, said, the state of your affairs can be either one or the other of the following. Either you are not enjoying nearness to God, the mighty, the glorious, or you are close to him. Now if you are away from him, how is it that you are sitting idle and are remiss in obtaining your large share and blessings and abiding honor and plentifulness and security and self-sufficiency and lavish care in this world and in the hereafter? So get up and hasten in your flight towards him with your two wings. One of these wings is the renunciation of enjoyments and of unlawful desires for them, and also of permissible things and all comforts. The other is the bearing of pain and unpleasant things, and embarking on difficult adventures and getting away from people and desires and wishes in this world and in the hereafter, so as to be successful in union with God and nearness to him. Then will you get all that a man may desire and obtain. You will then have great exaltation and honor, if you are among those who have been honored with. 123. Futuh al Ghaib. His kindness, and whom his love has absorbed, and who have received his mercy and compassion, then show the best of manners, and do not be puffed up with the thought of the state you are in, lest you should become negligent of your service and should lean towards the original arrogance, ignorance and oppression and hastiness. There is a word of God in this connection, and man has turned unfaithful to it. Surely he is unjust, ignorant. 33:72. Again, and man is ever hasty. 17:11. Protect your heart from being inclined towards what you have renounced of people and desires and wishes and option and effort, and from losing patience and harmony and pleasure with God at the time of the befalling of calamity, but throw yourself before him in the manner of a bull before a polo rider who makes it revolve by his stick, and like a dead body in front of a man who gives it the funeral bath, and like a suckling babe in the lap of his mother or nurse. Be blind to what is besides him, so that you do not see anything but him, nothing that exists, neither any harm, nor any benefit, nor any gift, nor any withholding of a gift. Consider people and worldly means at the time of suffering and calamity as lashes from him, the mighty, the glorious, with which he strikes you, and consider them at the time of comfort and ease and gift as his hand that is feeding you.